What we're seeing right now may be one of the most dangerous signals yet in the Iran-Israel confrontation. Iran has now claimed it fired the Sejjil missile at Israel for the first time, and if that claim is true, this is not just another exchange of fire. This is a message. The Sejjil is not the kind of missile you use for symbolism alone. It is a long-range, solid-fueled ballistic missile designed for faster launch readiness, deeper strike flexibility, and more serious strategic pressure. In other words, this is the kind of weapon that tells the region the war may be entering a new phase. Israeli sources say the missile was intercepted, which matters militarily, but the bigger story may be political and psychological. Because even if the interception worked, Iran may have just demonstrated that it is willing to raise the level of escalation, test Israel's defenses with more advanced systems, and show both Washington and Tel Aviv that its missile toolbox is broader than many expected. So tonight, the real question is not only whether Sejjil hit its target. The real question is why Iran chose this moment to unveil it in actual combat, and what that means for the next stage of this war. The reason this story is so explosive is because the Sejjil is not just another missile in Iran's arsenal. It is widely described by missile experts as a two-stage, solid-fuel, medium-range ballistic missile with an estimated range of around 2,000 kilometers, which means it can reach Israel from deep inside Iranian territory. That changes the military equation immediately. A solid-fuel missile matters because it can generally be prepared and launched faster than older liquid fuel systems, giving defenders less warning time and giving Iran more flexibility in how and where it launches. In plain terms, this is the kind of weapon designed for speed, readiness, and strategic pressure, not just raw spectacle. That is why Iran's claim of using Sejjil for the first time against Israel drew so much attention. Even if Israeli defenses intercepted the missile, the message is that Tehran may now be willing to bring more advanced and more survivable systems into direct combat. Analysts at CSIS describe Sejjil as a domestically built, two-stage solid propellant missile, while reporting on the June 18, 2025 attack shows Iran publicly claimed to have used it against Israel for the first time. So the real danger here is not only whether one missile got through. The deeper danger is that Iran may be signaling it is ready to escalate with weapons that are harder to preempt, faster to launch, and more politically intimidating than the missiles we have seen before. Iran did not choose this moment by accident. If Tehran really intended this launch to be seen by the world, then Sejjil was not just a military action. It was strategic theater with a very specific audience. The first audience was Israel, because using a more advanced solid-fuel missile sends a warning that Iran may still have escalation options beyond the weapons already seen in previous waves. The second audience was the United States, because every new missile threshold crossed by Iran increases pressure on Washington to decide whether it remains a supporter in the background or becomes more directly tied to Israel's defense posture. And the third audience was the wider region, especially Arab states, rival militias, and global markets, all of which watch for signs that this conflict is shifting from controlled retaliation to open-ended escalation. That is why the timing matters so much. By unveiling Sejjil in the middle of a high-tension phase, Iran may be trying to prove that it still has deterrent depth, that Israeli interceptions do not erase Iranian capability, and that any attempt to cripple Tehran's missile program will not remove its ability to threaten long-range targets. Several analysts tracking the June 2025 war assessed that the reported first combat use of Sejjil represented a deliberate signal of escalation rather than a random battlefield decision. So the launch was not only about impact, it was about perception, deterrence, and forcing every major actor in the region to recalculate what comes next. Israel's missile defense system is still one of the most advanced in the world, but this moment is not just about whether it can stop one missile. It is about whether it can keep stopping many missiles from different directions at different speeds over a sustained period of escalation. That is the real stress test. Israel operates a layered defense architecture built to handle rockets, drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles through systems like Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow. CSIS describes this network as a multi-layered shield specifically designed to deal with a wide spectrum of threats, while David's Sling is meant for medium to long-range rockets, cruise missiles, and some ballistic missile threats. That is why the Sejjil story matters. Even if Israel intercepted the reported Sejjil launch, interception by itself does not end the danger. In a real war, defenders are not judged only by whether they stop one incoming missile. They are judged by whether they can maintain that success across repeated salvos, while also dealing with drones, decoys, debris, public panic, and the political pressure that comes with every alert siren. On June 18, 2025, Times of Israel reported that Iran said it had fired a two-stage Sejjil missile and that the IDF said it was intercepted, with only minor damage reported. So the bigger concern is not that Israel suddenly has no defense. The bigger concern is attrition. Every new class of missile Iran introduces forces Israel to spend attention, interceptors, radar coverage, and command capacity. And if Iran's strategy is to combine more advanced ballistic missiles with larger waves of drones and other projectiles, then the goal may be less about guaranteeing a direct hit and more about gradually overloading the defense picture. That is why this phase feels so dangerous. Israel may still be stopping many of the threats, but the battlefield is starting to look less like a clean interception contest and more like a long endurance test of its entire defensive system. This may be the most dangerous part of the entire story, because every time Iran raises the level of missile escalation against Israel, the United States moves one step closer to a decision it may not want to make. Washington does not need to fire the first shot to become deeply involved. It only needs to keep reinforcing Israeli defense, expanding intelligence support, repositioning naval assets, and signaling that it will not allow Israel to be overwhelmed. And once that happens, the line between support and direct involvement can begin to shrink very quickly. That is why Iran's reported use of Sejjil matters far beyond the battlefield. A missile with this kind of range and symbolism sends a message not only to Israel, but to the White House, the Pentagon, and every American ally watching the region. It says that Tehran may be prepared to escalate in ways that force the United States to either show stronger commitment or risk looking passive while a close partner faces increasingly serious threats. In past crises, Washington has tried to balance deterrence with restraint, backing Israel while also trying to prevent a full regional war. But that balance becomes harder to maintain when each new Iranian move appears larger, bolder, and more strategic than the last. So the real risk now is not simply an Iran-Israel exchange. The real risk is miscalculation, where one interception fails, one strike causes mass casualties, or one retaliatory move crosses a line that neither side can easily walk back. And if that happens, the United States may find itself no longer managing the edge of the conflict, but standing inside it. The biggest question now is whether this was a one-time signal or the beginning of a new phase in the war. That is what makes the reported Sejjil launch so important. If Iran only wanted a dramatic headline, then this may fade into the long list of escalatory moments that shocked the region but did not permanently change the battlefield. But if Tehran is now prepared to use more advanced, longer-range solid-fuel systems as part of a broader pressure campaign, then this could mark a real turning point. Because wars do not change only when cities fall or armies move. Sometimes they change when one side reveals a new level of capability, a new willingness to escalate, or a new confidence that deterrence still works in its favor. And that may be exactly what Tehran was trying to show. Israel may have intercepted the missile. The United States may still be trying to contain the crisis, but the psychological threshold may already have shifted. From this point forward, every future missile wave, every air defense alert, and every emergency meeting in Washington will be judged against one new reality. Iran has now signaled that even more serious weapons may be on the table. That does not automatically mean all-out war is inevitable, but it does mean the margin for error is getting smaller, the cost of miscalculation is getting higher, and the next escalation could be far more dangerous than the last. So in the end, the Sejjil story is not just about one missile. It is about whether the region has quietly crossed into a more volatile and less predictable stage of conflict than at any point before.